It has always been a dream of mine to own a large collection of books and to have a large TBR of possibilities to pull from. But while I love having a lot of books, I currently don't want to add any more bookshelves into my home, which means that these stacks of books that I currently have on the floor are a problem. So I somehow need to get all of these books from the floor onto my shelves, which are currently at capacity, which is where this series comes in. Throughout 2024, I'm going to be stuffing these stacks onto my shelves through any means possible. At the beginning of every episode, I will use a random number generator to select books that have to make their way to my shelves or my unhaul pile by the end of the vlog. The easiest way to start may be to read them, but if I then decide that I want to keep them, I will need to choose another book from my shelves to either read or unhaul. The episode will end when the original books chosen from the stacks and all subsequent ones pulled from shelves have made their way to either their new home on a shelf or into my unhaul pile. The stacks may change throughout the year as I organically read, unhaul and rearrange my shelves. The pool of books to choose from may change slightly as things get moved around my library, or the pile could shrink with a big unhaul, or even grow if I buy too many books, but the overall goal remains the same. By the end of 2024, the stacks have to go. In episode 7, we shelved 1 book and we scrapped 2, and we are going to be starting episode 8 with 68 books in the stacks. Welcome to episode 8 of Shelve It or Scrap It, in which I have made a boo-boo. Because I have filmed 2 unboxings since the last time we filmed an episode of this vlog series, I can lean against these stacks now. They are intense. They are mega. They are solid, supportive, foreboding, all of the words. Is what they are. And we also need to enter drastic measures because it has been a while since we have made any real significant progress in reducing these. We got them down to like 40 at one point, and then I had to film a book haul and they went all the way back up. Since then, they haven't come back down again, and I can see in the next couple of months I am gonna have to film another book haul. So we gotta do something over the next couple of months to drastically reduce the stacks, or at least reduce them at an accelerated pace. And so I would like to thank Amy Louise for their contribution to this, because they left a comment on episode 7 and this is just, it's genius. They were inspired by the section of the last vlog where I was upstairs and I was trying to pick what book I was going to read next, and I said like, oh, I could read the Jennifer L. Armentrout books, but I don't think that would make me unhaul them. Amy's response was, maybe you could try an episode of reading books in series or authors that might make you unhaul multiple books on your shelves to allow for more of the stacks to be shelved. This was a potential, because like we say in the beginning, like we're getting these onto the shelves in any means necessary, and one of the potential options is like, I don't know, say I randomly generated this book and I didn't want to read it, I could put it on a shelf and like take the book off the shelf and read that book instead. So like taking from the shelves instead of the stacks has always been an option, but not one that I have ever utilized, and we are going to utilize that today, which means that we need a change of scenery. Welcome to my unhaul cart. She is crusty, she is dusty, she is storage for embroidery kits as well as books that I literally never look at. But if you are familiar with my channel as well as just this series, you will know that I do have another series that I make yearly, which is the Self Destructing Books series. So I will link this year's episode of Self Destructing Books down in my description box if you guys want to get caught up on what is happening here, because this comment from Amy means that I can kill 3 birds with 1 stone, because one of my main goals for this year is to read more sequels and series that I start. We have Shelve It or Scrap It to get the stacks onto the shelves, and we also have the Self-Destructing Books. So every year I make this video, and the concept is that I pick 10 books off my shelves that I'm not so sure about, and I give myself 1 year to read them. If I have not read them in that 1 year period, then I will revisit the video 1 year on and I will unhaul them all. And this year I decided that the theme was going to be sequels to series that I was not sure that at this point I wanted to continue. So for episode 8 of Shelve It or Scrap It, we are going to be reading some of the sequels from this year's Self-Destructing Books video, with the idea that I will read them and then unhaul the entire series, making quite a bit of room on my shelves. So the contenders, there's also just, this is just books that I'm not sure about in general, not all of them are self-destructing. So I think most of them are the ones on the top, and then the ones on the bottom I think are all just generally books that I'm not so sure about. There's two actually down here, which is The Solace of Sharp Claws by Lana Pacherzik, which belongs upstairs on the romance shelves, and The Boy on the Bridge by M.R. Carey. So what we need to do here, because I think I am just gonna like choose what I read, at least for the first one maybe, but we're gonna see what's gonna make like the biggest dent or can do the most good. So looking at my shelves from here, looking at the stacks from here, the sad thing is that what I mainly see is a bunch of subscription box books and hardbacks. So if I were to read this, if I unhauled this series, I would make a lot of space on my shelves, but I only have a small amount of paperbacks that would fill that. To be fair though, that would probably get all of the paperbacks that aren't romance out of the stacks, which I mean is something. But for the first one, I guess I want to be straying more towards the hardbacks. I am currently also participating in Magical Readathon, and I do have 2 Magical Readathon prompts that I need that I have not yet completed. One of which is to read a book with a map, which some of these would be a good contender. And the other one is to read a book with a night sky on the cover, which I'm less interested in filling from here because I do already have a book in mind that I do have to read in September anyway. So if we were thinking about maps, there are definitely 3 books missing. Oh, I found them. I found 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I feel like I need to go back and figure out what the 10th book is. But we also have The Night Country by Melissa Alba and Deadline by Mira Grant, a part of this challenge. So I've heard terrible things about the Serpent and Dove series. I feel like this is one that I feel like I am definitely gonna be unhauling when I've finished. So let's look in this one. Do you have a map? You don't. That is so rude. I hate it here. I hate it here. Yeah, no map in that one. What about Blood and Honey? Does have a map, so this one could be the one. Because Cytonic by Brenda Sanderson does have a night sky on the cover, but if I were to unhaul that, I would only make space on my specific Brenda Sanderson shelf, and I'm not really sure how useful that would be. So, oh, let me just check. Why are all these books so thick as well? That's just rude, honestly. Yeah, there's nothing in that one. There's nothing in this one. This one also has a map. Oh, and that would also, both of these would clear quite a bit of space on my romance shelves. And there's at least 6 books that I can see from here. 7, 8, 9. Oh, so we do need to clear up some space on the romance shelves. So maybe we'll go with one of these. I think I'm gonna go with the one that I'm least likely to keep, and I think that that is going to be The Solace of Sharp Claws, because this is a series that a lot of my patrons really like, but it falls into the formulaic nature of paranormal romance for me, where it is kind of a different main character and love interest per book, and every love interest is a paranormal creature. This series is in sections, so the first 4 books are like wolf shifters, but they're also fae, and the next 4 are like vampires, but they're also fae. And then the interesting thing about this series, because I have read the first book, and the thing that intrigued me about it is that it is set in a futuristic, like post-apocalyptic Las Vegas, I'm pretty sure, and the main character is from like modern times, and she ends up waking up in like this post-apocalyptic future that's like way in the future, and magical creatures like fae are dominating the landscape, so it reads almost like it's historical and medieval, but it's actually far in the future. So I was really intrigued about that element, but I didn't love the fact that it does essentially read like paranormal romance, and that's just not something that I'm interested in at all at this point. I have been gifted by Ash, one of my wonderful patrons who loves this series, the first 5 books though. So if I decided to DNF the series after this one, then that would be like a whole cubby of my romance shelves that I managed to clear. Whereas this one, I've heard that this series goes downhill with every book, but I did give book 1 5 stars. I admit now that it was kind of like a hasty 5 stars in the moment, and it was more like a 4 or maybe a 3, but I feel like I'm more likely to continue on with this and finish the series before I think about unhauling, whereas I feel with this one I could be quite comfortable unhauling it after this book. So this is what we're going to start with. I remember the first book being a pretty quick read as well, and I don't know what method we're going to use for picking the next book, but I do feel pretty confident that we are going to be picking from the Self Destructing Books for the entirety of this episode. So I am 118 pages into The Solace of Sharp Claws, which is 28%. I've actually been reading it on my Kindle because it's on KU and it's just like easier to hold. But this one is following the son of the phase shifter in book 1. So I can't remember the specifics because they do go into it a lot in book 1, but Thorn, who is the guy in this one, he was the result of some sort of breeding program. So his father like didn't know that he existed, but he still holds it against his dad because obviously like regardless of what the situation was, he grew up without a father. So he does hold that against Rush. And he also has a lot of resentment towards the environment, like the place, the clan maybe, that he has grown up in, and like his place in the order, which is like the Fey warriors. He has a lot of anger towards all of these things. And our female main character in here is once again a freshly thawed human. We have a lot less mystery about the world in this one because we know that it is like a futuristic version of our world. Something that I forgot about is that the reason why there's magic in this world when there isn't magic in our world is because plastic and metal blocks the flow of magic. So once they have rid all of the plastic and the metal from the world, then magic can return. So our female main character is defrosted. She is friends with the main character of the first book, which is Clark. The one in here, why I've already forgotten her name, I've literally just been reading. She is called, oh my god, Laurel. She's called Laurel. And back in the day in the old human world, she was a fitness queen. She was a workaholic. She had a business empire. She had gyms and brand deals and all of this good stuff. She taught fitness classes. She is incredibly active, incredibly hardworking. So she is defrosted into this world, and she is really loving like Thorn's adventurous side. Like she's bringing him out of his shell a little bit and also learning to live and adapt to like this new world where she can't be like the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company because they literally like don't exist here. The reason why Thorn is kind of going along with this and entertaining Laurel is because there was a prophecy that she will lead him to Jasper, who is his friend who has been missing for quite some time. Obviously along the way they do fall in love because it is predominantly a romance. So it's fine. The thing that frustrates me about series like this or books like this in general is that the fantasy element is interesting. I am really fascinated by the fact that this is post-apocalyptic, it's futuristic, and like we have the thing with the metal and the plastic and that's blocking the flow of magic. And because the books are predominantly romance, we focus way more on the romantic plotline, which I care so much less about when we actually have like an interesting backdrop for a story going on here. I haven't been hating this while I've been reading it, but I do think that that is because I've been dipping between this and The Will of the Many by James Islington for the vlog that I will have posted the week before this one, I believe. But I think that I was enjoying it a little bit more when I was dipping between the two, because The Will of the Many was satisfying my need to read like a really good book and something that was like mentally stimulating me. And then The Solace of Sharp Claws was just like an easy read to pick up between that, which was a little bit of a break because while I loved The Will of the Many, it was obviously a lot more dense than this is. So now that I'm switching back over to just exclusively reading The Solace of Sharp Claws, it's getting a little bit tedious. I'm not loving it too much. I'm gonna give it at least a little bit longer. I do intend to finish this one. I can use a scroll for Magical Readathon to count it towards the prompt anyway, even if I do decide to DNF it. But because this is my Magical Readathon book and it is such an easy read, I feel like I should just, you know, just see it through. But it is kind of reinforcing my opinion that I am probably going to unhaul this series when I finish this book, because I just don't get anything out of books like this. There are some things that work for me, like I've been really enjoying the Pretty Little Liars series by Sarah Shepherd, which are really easy reads that don't stay with me a great deal, but they're really entertaining while I read them. And I know that like this genre is that for so many people, like they're entertaining in the moment. Maybe they're not the best thing you've ever read, but like they serve their purpose at the time you're reading them. They just don't really do anything for me, and I don't know why it is, because like I've said, I think a big part of it is because I get frustrated that we're not really delving into the nitty-gritty. As somebody who loves high epic fantasy, I really want us to explore these little like details of the world, but the world is kind of just a backdrop for the romance, and then the plots generally feel quite rushed because they're not super elaborate, because they're mainly just to provide a structure for the romance. But saying that, I read contemporary romance, and while obviously I don't love all contemporary romance, I enjoy a lot of contemporary romance that I read, and that has very little plot outside of the romantic relationship, and the outside plot is potentially even less interesting because it's not even fantastical, so it's much more mundane, and I'm fine with that. But I'm like, I just don't get any enjoyment really out of this. So I don't know, like I really wish I knew why I didn't love. I'm gonna say paranormal romance. This isn't explicitly paranormal romance, but it is in the spirit of paranormal in terms of the formula of paranormal romance is very similar to this, especially because we're mainly following like shifters and vampires, but then they're all also under the umbrella term of fae, which does technically make it more fantasy, but then it's also dystopian, which makes it sci-fi. So it's a whole bunch of things, but I think at its core, at its like very nature, it is a paranormal romance. So yeah, that's where I'm currently at with this one. I don't want to, especially if I'm not going to DNF this one, I don't want to hang about. I don't want to take my time with it. I kind of just want to, you know, maybe it's a good reset because I have just finished The Will of the Many. Maybe this will reset my brain a little bit to go into something potentially a little bit more complicated. I'm going to put an ASMR room on now. I think I want to play some Overcooked soon. But I'm going to put an ASMR room on while I read some more of this and we'll just see how far I get. I'm very cozy. I've been caught out in the rain twice today, so I'm just happy to be lying here under a blanket with my hoodie on, reading my book. Saying that though, I feel like I'm getting a bit of a headache, which is not ideal. This morning I was actually kind of committed to DNF in this book. After I updated you last night, like I read another 5% and I was just like, I just felt like I wasn't getting anything from this book. And I was thinking about calling it quits, but I actually woke up this morning not feeling too great. I had like 3 inconveniences before 9 a.m. and I got a bit of work done. I got done everything that I absolutely had to get done today. And then I pretty much spent the rest of the day rotting on the couch. And this is a perfect couch rot book. So I'm now 71% into it. Honestly, still cannot say that I'm enjoying it. Like it's still just fine. It's still not really giving me anything, but I just wanted something that was very like low energy, didn't require too many brain cells, and this has definitely delivered. So I guess now at 71%, I might as well see this through. My original intention was to take Brew for a walk, have my coffee and read while I was having coffee just for something to read. And then I was going to tell you guys that I was done, but no, we're now like 40% later and I'm still going. So I've actually just switched because I thought that I had about 105 pages left, but then according to where I'm up to in the physical copy, I've actually only got 69. Well, hey. Pages. So I am gonna try and finish it now. Honestly, I'm still not feeling very good, mainly just like very tired, and I have napped this evening, went for a walk, felt terrible. And now I'm in bed. So it is 9:55, but based on how run down I felt when I woke up this morning, I think I want to try and get a little bit of extra sleep tonight. So I don't know how long I'm gonna read for, but if I could finish this before I went to sleep and bring you guys my verdict in the morning, which I'm pretty confident in saying at this point I am going to unhaul this series, but that's like my ideal scenario. I finished The Solace of Sharp Claws and I gave it 2 stars. It's not for me. This genre is not for me. Realistically, I should have DNF'd this one, but it was an okay couch rot book. Honestly, like I needed something to read yesterday and I did not want to really put my face on camera, especially earlier in the day, because I was a mess. Like I was feeling super clammy, really like sleepy, and it wasn't a vibe. So I just decided to carry on with this one, and then I read the last few pages this morning. I truly don't really even have anything to say about it. This genre is just not for me. It does not delve into the things that I want it to delve into with any kind of detail, and to say that this has no plot would be to sell it a little bit short. There is something going on here. There's like people that came from the same place that the human women came from, like in the past, that are the main antagonists for this series, and these women along with their guardians are kind of working to take them down and help to bring a little bit of the human world to this fey kingdom, but like the good of the human world and the good way that humans work together to kind of meld the current fae culture and the past human culture together like in the best ways possible. But it's just like it's a series that focuses more on the romances. They're quick, they're short, they're snappy, they're supposed to hold your attention for the time that you're reading them, and then like they're not going to stay with me. These types of books don't stay with me for a very long time. So with that in mind, I am going to be unhauling all of the Fae Guardian books that I own, which I believe is all 3 books in the season of the wolf and the first book in the season of the vampire. So we're gonna go do that. Those are upstairs on my romance shelves, and obviously because I know that it's romance, I'm gonna take a stack of romance books from down here to hopefully get on the shelves up there, and we're gonna do a little bit of a rearrange. So these 3, oh my god, along with, did I bring it upstairs? I did unnecessarily. These four are the books that we're going to be scrapping, which leaves us with a little bit of space here. So I brought 4 books up to kind of replace them, but we are going to have to rearrange a little bit. So I also didn't know how big the shelf was, so I brought like this one, but that one's not going to fit. We are going to have to move stuff around in general though. So brought the little tripod so I'd hopefully have a bit more maneuverability in this area of the shelves because the landing's so narrow. But we can also move, because I've got my M's after my P's and I don't know why, because these could very easily not be like that because these cubbies are the same size. We have an N here that will also fit. I do know as well that I've hauled like a bunch of books that I'm gonna need space for and it's just not gonna work. So we'll see how these end up in a couple of months. But for now, S. So here we go. Sharma. I don't really want to separate the Nalini Singh, so we'll put that one on there. Julie Soto. And this one isn't going to fit. Will it fit on there? Will fit on there, but I don't want to separate the Scarlett Sinclairs either. And it's not going to fit, so... If I were to take this, because this one is, I just realized you guys can't see. If I were to take this one and move onto a different shelf, because this is a different series to the Hades Persephone series, I could put this up here and then I can fit this one there, actually kind of where it would go alphabetically. And then I think, so I don't think I'm gonna get the donut trap in anywhere. And then I think that this one is going to be going back downstairs with me and going back into the stacks, which is fine actually, because I do want to read this one. Like, it seems really cute, but I don't think it's one that I would necessarily pick up without kind of being pushed into it or prompted to do so in some way. So the stacks is actually a pretty good place for this one. So by my calculation, we have just shelved 3 books and we're going to be scrapping 4, and I am actually going to have to write down the books that we're shelving and scrapping for this round, because I feel like with the way we're doing it, clearing off the shelves and replenishing from the stacks, I'm going to lose track really quickly. So I'm going to go make a note of those books and then we will pick what I'm going to be reading next. Okay, so for my next read, I am running into a little bit of a dilemma because I only have a few days left of the month, which means that I only have a few days left of Magical Readathon. I still have 2 books left on my Magical Readathon TBR, and at this point I am getting a little bit worried that I'm not going to be able to finish them and the books for this challenge as well. So we may be looking to double up a little bit. The 2 prompts that I have left are a book that has been mentioned in any of G's videos, which the book I currently have in for that is a very short one, so I'm not as worried about that. But then the other prompt is a book with a night sky on the cover. As I think we discussed earlier, we do also have a lot of hardbacks in the stacks, so a really good thing to do potentially would be to find something that is going to create me some space on my hardback shelves. So let's get these 3 down from up here, which this has night in the title but not a night sky on the cover, which is just rude. For the hardbacks, no night sky there. I'll just remove this. No night sky on that one. No night sky on this one, which I was hoping that that one would have it. So we are out of luck because the only one that I have is Cytonic, but as I said, in terms of this challenge, that's not really going to do much for me because it's just going to create space on a Brandon Sanderson shelf where I don't really need that space right now because there's no Sanderson books in the stacks. So it looks like we can't double up. I'm just going to have to replace the book that I currently have in and try and find like a comic or something to replace it with. Fingers crossed. What about this one? No, there's sadly no night sky on this one as well. So this is all of the books that we have to choose from. So I need to think about this as well in terms of what books are going to clear the most space. And if we think about it like that, it's definitely going to be this one. But then I don't know for sure that I'm going to unhaul this series when I've read this one, because I really enjoyed book 1, but I didn't love book 2. So while it would be a really good move to finally read this, I don't think that's the best move right now. So if we're talking about clearing hardback space, these are our 2 options. I I'm very torn about reading this because I don't support the author. I did already have her books though, so it was revealed that she had been bullying other authors to make herself and her books look better, and I think it was Hafsa Faisal that spoke out about it, but I already had the books at the time. At this point, like, I didn't love the first book, so I kind of want to just give the second book a go to prove to myself that I don't care and I can unhaul them. It's a weird thing because, like, I know that I probably am not gonna love this, but I need to, like, prove it. I don't know. That's just what my brain is telling me. And then the other one is Misrule by Heather Walter. So this one, I enjoyed the first book. This one is like a sapphic Sleeping Beauty retelling, but from the perspective of, like, Maleficent. And I didn't think that the first book was as dark as I wanted it to be, but based on where the first book leaves off, there's potential for this to go a little bit darker. Because obviously these books are in the shelves, if I read this, I'm only going to be unhauling one book off, like, a random miscellaneous hardback shelf. But I don't know. Can you guys see? This is the art of this book that was sent to me by the publisher. So if I read this, then I can also potentially unhaul that one and create a space there for, like, a small hardback as well. So I think that's what I'm gonna do, and then I'll see if this is the third book I want to pick up a little bit later on, but we will decide that later. We'll see how this one goes, because this one I did enjoy book one. I just don't think I'm gonna care enough when I finish book two to care about keeping them. So like I said, Sapphic Sleeping Beauty retelling. We're following a girl called, I'm pretty sure she's called Alice, and she's known as the Dark Grace, and there are other Graces which are essentially like the fairy godmothers, and they provide people with blessings. Like, they will give you the blessing of health or wisdom or beauty, and Alice, because she's the Dark Grace, curses people or hexes people, and she's obviously treated terribly for this, even though this is a position that she has been put in, not one that she has ever actually chosen for herself. And one day I think she's invited to attend the birthday party of Aurora, and they meet and start to grow closer. So that's what we are gonna be reading next, and hopefully I will be able to squeeze a couple of those magical readathon books alongside so that I don't fail my magical readathon TBR. I mean, I can always buy a scroll to extend the time that I have for magical readathon, and one of the books, like the book for Night Sky on the cover, is one that I have to read anyway, so that is potentially a solution. I am actually also creating space on this cart, which I could fill with other books that I'm unsure about, because this is my unhaul cart, so, like, it has a lot of thrillers and stuff on that I kind of know that once I've read them, the enjoyment is in reading them and I won't want to revisit them. But at the same time, I actually kind of want to empty this and use it as a craft cart. These are currently exempt from the shelves, and that's a decision that I'll make on another day.
Spring is the season that wakes me alive, and fall is the season to contemplate life. Oh, I don't know what is it exactly in this time of year that makes the melancholy me reappear. Oh,
I just made myself some tea and sat down to start Misrule, which I've decided to read the hardback as opposed to the ARC copy. But I actually forgot I took the bookmark out of this when I put it into the dust jacket, because this book was released in 2022, aka the year of my mentee bee. And the whole reason why I haven't read this, even though I received an ARC of it, is because my mental health was just so bad. Like, if you go back through my videos, it is well documented that I was literally having the worst time throughout pretty much that entire year. So was it 2021 as well? It was a while. Like, we were down in the trenches fighting ourselves. It was rough. But essentially, like, if you sent me an ARC in 2022, I could not commit to it. Like, I could not commit to anything but the bare minimum for the majority of that entire year. So I started this either for Magical Readathon or for the Bookoplathon of that year. And at page 80, I kind of just put it down, and I was like, I remember actually being on the couch, putting the bookmark in, putting it on the footstool and being like, can't do it. Can't do it. Not for any reason. I guess I had something else to read, or I just couldn't read in general at that moment. So yeah, we're now heading back. I am going to restart, because that was 2 years ago, and even though it's only like 80 pages, so I could probably like figure out what's going on, we're just going to read 80 pages again. So it is like 3:40. I've just finished editing the TBR that I filmed. I should really edit an hour of the vlog that's going up this week, but my neck hurts because I've been sat at my desk for a long time. So I'm gonna wrap it up tomorrow anyway, and I only have about an hour and a half, 2 hours left of editing to do on it. So we'll just save it all for tomorrow, and I'll spend my time getting through a chunk of this instead.
back and forth through
I'm 130 pages in now. I have not been reading very much of this. Like, I have not dedicated a lot of time to this. It is so quick, and I started it earlier and I read a few pages and I was like, ooh, maybe this isn't the quick read that I kind of remember book one being. And then I kind of looked up and 30 pages has passed. And it's not that it's super compelling, because I feel like now that I'm a good chunk of the way through this book, I kind of remember my criticisms about book one, because I remember that like I liked it, but more in a way where I felt like it had a lot of potential that it didn't quite reach. This one is quite jarring because it's set pretty much, there's like a prologue that's set directly after book one, and then the rest of the book is set like 100 years later. So the place where they are is different. They're in the middle of a conflict with like other people. There's loads of side characters and like a whole court and city that we've never met before, and I don't feel like it is very, for such a drastic change of setting and change of equilibrium, which we knew was coming at the end of book one, but like there's no gradual introduction to it. It's just like, oh, this is the way that the world is now. I think that if I remember correctly, my main criticism of book one, which is the same for book two, is that I feel like it lacks depth, because this is a villain origin story. Especially in book one, it's very much the lead up to Maleficent becoming a villain, and book two explores her as a villain a little bit more. In this, she's called Alice, but she is the Maleficent character. So for something that is so character focused, I don't think it's a very character driven story. Like, Alice is a character that we are supposed to empathize with and we are supposed to root for. And I remember really empathizing with her in the first book and everything that was done to her that made her feel like the only thing that she could do was like turn to villainy. But then when we get into book two, she is doing some more terrible things, because I remember thinking in book one that it didn't go as dark as I wanted it to for a villain origin story. She's doing some pretty bad shit in this, but it seems almost petty. Like, I don't care that she's doing it. I don't feel like it's believable. I don't feel like she's justified. And like, in the long run, like everything that's been done to her and done to her people, yes, it is kind of justified, but I don't feel it, you know? Like, I don't feel any satisfaction in her taking revenge on certain people, because I don't feel like this book is character driven enough for me to really feel that connection to the character. And when we are talking about a villain origin story, when we are having to empathize with somebody who's not doing great stuff or root for somebody who's not doing great stuff, I feel like you really, really need to build a connection between the reader and that character for it to really land. So this is, for me, like, it's just a book that I'm reading right now. I don't feel any kind of way about it. We have just had like a pretty big thing happen in the plot, which has changed our point of where we're at and the trajectory of like where the book is going to go. But I don't actually care, and I feel like I like a lot less about this book than I liked about book one, because I actually really liked the setting and the world in book one. But like I said, 100 years has passed now and all of that has changed. So some of the stuff that I really enjoyed about book one really isn't present in here. And some of the characters, based on some of the events and the way that they're reacting to them, I don't like them very much either. So we'll see how it goes. It is, like I said, exceptionally quick. So I feel like I'm going to get through it pretty quickly, which is nice, but I do feel like this is very much along the same lines as book one for me. So I have just gotten out of my monthly Crafty Corner live show with my patrons. I've been working on my paint by numbers. I did a lot of the bottom bits today and I don't have very much left, which I'm very excited about. I have a different craft project lined up for when I finish this one, but I am also going to order another paint by number because I've had a really good time with this one. But I'm here right now. We are gathered here today because I have a little bit of a cheeky book haul, and I know hauling books during Shelve It or Scrap It is bad form, okay? I know this, but it is what it is. So one of these is a Vinted order and one is a couple of books that Leanne sent me. So we will do the Vinted order first because I know what these are and I know what they're about. But I gotta say, very good packaging on this for a Vinted order. Very impressed. Actually a little bit sad that I now have to tear this apart. I'm actually surprised because I don't think I knew know, I think these are all hardbacks and I don't think I expected them to be. They're also like, oh my god. When I said they were well wrapped, this is just, I feel like I'm playing past the parcel. Oh, I forgot that they were these covers. Yay. Are these the US copies? They are. So I have ordered, I don't know what order these actually go in, but Ruthless, Stunning, and Twisted by Sarah Shepherd, and I think that these are books 9, 10 and 11 in the Pretty Little Liars series, but I'm not sure what order they go in. Weirdly, it does not have a series list in the beginning of the book, which you really think that it would based on it being such a long series, but I'm gonna look actually, which one is it? This one looks enormous compared to the rest. Most of them are about 270 pages. Oh wow, this one's over 300. That's intense. But I'm doing a kind of low-key unofficial read-along of the Pretty Little Liars series in my Patreon. Every month when we have our 24-hour readathon, we've been reading one of these books. So for October, we will be reading book 8, which is the last one that I have. So I wanted to make sure that I had the next ones lined up. My library only has a couple of them, so this is like getting them on Vinted. I think I paid like £2 each for these. It's the most cost-effective way to get my hands on them. And then the second package that I have is from Leanne. When I was staying with her when I went to Rare, she received a PR package from, I'm pretty sure it was from Del Rey, which had like a couple of books and some sweets and other stuff in it. Since then, she has received a second package with the same book. So she asked if I wanted them, and I'm pretty sure that at least one of them is a horror, which I thought would be perfect for the season, and I definitely need more horror in my collection, so I was like, sure, why not? But these are both by V. Castro, and they are The Haunting of Alejandra and Immortal Pleasures, both giving very different vibes. This is given like self-published smut, and this is given like deep literary fiction. I'm not going to go into super detail about the actual synopses of these because honestly, like I've read them twice now and I thought that they sounded good, but I keep forgetting. The top of this one says a woman is haunted by the Mexican folk demon La Llorona in this ravishing and provocative literary horror novel about motherhood, family legacy, and self-discovery. And then this one says an ancient Aztec vampire roams the modern world in search of vengeance and love in this seductive dark fantasy from the author of The Haunting of Alejandra. So this one is the one that obviously sounds more appealing to me, but I'll give this one a go as well. And I don't know, do they have any information on them? These are US copies to start off with, so no, I don't think. Oh, there's also a bunch of like stickers and bookmarks and book plates in here. Is this book? No, there's also this. Are these from Titan? Because they have, I'm so confused, because they have Del Rey on the spine, but this says at the bottom, it says Titan Books. So I'm even more confused than I was to start off with. But yeah, I have these as well, which will be good contenders for any of the spookier Spookopoly prompts that come up when the readathon kicks in a few days, actually. It's truly not very far. So on that note, I'm going to get back to my book. I'm currently on page 300 and it is still passing very quickly, but I'm very, very annoyed by the characters. They are both behaving in quite a petty manner, and it is frustrating because I lack that empathy with the characters, because I don't feel like I am feeling what she's feeling when she's doing stuff that is quite obviously like a knee-jerk reaction to being hurt with like very little thought behind it. I am finding it very frustrating. She has a great deal of prejudice for one of the side characters that is a member of like this court because of somebody that she knew who has hurt her in the past that is of like the same species as this person. So she's essentially exhibiting the same prejudice towards this person that she has faced her entire life, when her whole ethos is supposed to be hurting people who have hurt people like her and her based on how they look and like treating them like monsters. So it's just stuff like that where like I'm really struggling to empathize with her, because I understand like she's been hurt before, so she thinks that like all of these people are the same, but like they're clearly not. And her refusal to give this person a chance when she has been confronted with the fact time and time again that she's not being fair and she's not giving this person a chance is actually just really irritating me. And then on the other side of that, we have Aurora, who has a sense of entitlement entitlement that comes with being a princess that is so out of place in her current situation, but she is facing no repercussions for the way that she's strutting around this place like she owns it. And to be fair, she kind of does, but the situation that she's in now is very different than being the princess of a kingdom. So I feel like I still feel like it's not as dark as it needs to be, because where we have opportunities for it to really embrace that, it's just not. It's just really, really falling flat. I was wondering whether this would be a tough unhaul, whether I'd be undecided about whether I wanted to keep it. But the more I get into it, the more I do think it's going to be an easy unhaul. The relationship between Aurora and Alice as well is, I'm not getting love, like I'm not getting romance, like I'm getting overbearing, kind of almost stalker, like unhealthy relationship kind of vibes. And I don't know what the end has in store for this relationship, because it is a villain origin story. I don't know whether it's going to be they lived happily ever after, or they had irreconcilable differences and went their separate ways. But right now I feel like they need to break up, because they are the worst. Honestly, the worst. It's not a good time. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get ready for bed. I'll give it half an hour and then I'll get ready for bed and get some more reading done. It is almost 5. It's Friday evening and I have just finished up sprints with my patrons. I'm just getting ready to shut my computer down as well, because it's nearly the weekend in like 8 minutes. It's the weekend. But during those sprints, I did manage to finish Misrule, and I'm really, really proud of myself, because I finished this in like less than 48 hours, and that is quite unusual for me, especially when I gave this book 2 stars. So I didn't like it very much, but I still managed to finish it quickly. And there are things that I do like about this series. I think that the main thing that I enjoy is the world. I do think more in book 1 than book 2 though, because it had that very almost like technicolor fairy tale-esque kind of vibe. This one was a lot more drab and a lot more dreary, and I think having 2 very different vibes in book 1 and book 2 was also to this series' detriment, because I felt like there was very little world building done at the beginning of, I can't remember a great deal about the first book at this point. It's been years since I read it. But in this one, I felt like the time that we had to establish this new setting, these new side characters, the new species that we were talking about, which we had only really heard about in book 1. We hadn't really met any of these new species. I feel like it was not necessarily rushed, but I didn't have time to truly establish myself in this world with this new dynamic and get to really know any of our side characters. Now, this is a series that hinges very much on the emotional connection that our main character Alice has with other characters, and because I was feeling that lack of depth, like I felt a lack of connection, and that also meant that I found the characters to be very frustrating, because while I logically understood why they were doing what they were doing, I didn't really believe it. So I was frustrated definitely by a lot of their actions in this book, Alice's especially, but also Aurora's. Now, I did mention before that I was annoyed at kind of where this was going in terms of it being a romance. I am quite satisfied with how that romantic relationship left off in this book, and I'm also quite happy with like the end point of the series. Interestingly though, this is a duology. It has always been stated to be a duology. I believe it is still a duology, but it leaves off in a place where I feel like there is definitely more. Like, our main character of Alice is not settled in any way, shape or form like you would expect a main character to be at the end of a series. So I feel like there is possibility for sequel there, but I don't actually think any sequel is coming. So I thought that that was an interesting place for us to end on. And overall, like, I feel like that this had a great concept. I feel like it had a lot of promise. I don't like Heather Walters' writing style at all. I just feel like there's a real lack of immersion there, and I was not connected to these characters at all, which is really, really important for me, especially like I said, when we're dealing with characters that are making decisions like so emotionally. Like, I need to be on their side rooting for them and really empathizing with them to get behind questionable decisions that are made like purely on like the basis of emotion. So in terms of whether we are going to be shelving or scrapping this series, I think it's safe to say, like you guys probably already know, that I am going to be scrapping this one, which means that it is time to hunt down the first book in this series so we can get it off my shelves and put something else in its place. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but if you look down there deep behind the stacks, Malice by Heather Walter is here. So it's good because I don't don't have to carry around any books from the stacks, but it is kind of like partially obscured by the stack. So let's get in here. I'll move some of this out of my way. So this one, oh, it's tight. This one is coming off and will be unhauled. And then these shelves are, they're not great. So this shelf, and this shelf where Malice was are all just miscellaneous hardbacks. So this one has some like large paperbacks down the other side of the shelf that's like obscured by these, but the rest of it down this side is just miscellaneous hardbacks as well. So it really doesn't matter to me what I put here, but everything is still in alphabetical order, so it has to be, I guess, a author whose last name starts with a letter later in the alphabet than R. So oops. Oh, I've just pulled this at the back of my tripod. That's not great. Just screw that back in there. Whoopsie. Okay, so looking at the stacks, I do struggle to think about what kind of things like I want to keep in the stacks and what I don't, because things I need to, there we go. Can you see me a little bit? Just a smidge better. But things that I'm not super interested in or I'm a little bit ambivalent about, it is a good idea to keep them in the stacks, because that means that there is more of a chance of me picking them up anytime soon. Do you know, like the kind of books that like I am interested in, but the kind of books that I don't really see myself picking up unless there's some sort of reason. It benefits me if they stay here, because then they're actually going to get read instead of just languishing on my shelves. But then at the same time, I don't want this to be full of books that I feel like very ambivalent about. I want to keep some stuff on here that I really want to read. So I don't think I'm going to really go with any strategy. I'm just going to try and get a book onto the shelves. Maybe The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten. I do really want to read this. A lot of people like this, people who like the same kind of thing as me, so I feel like this would be a good shout of like something that I might enjoy. I don't even know if it'll fit. Oh, it does. Well, I guess that's staying there then. I actually know I want to read this, and I'm not going to read it very soon if it's in there, so let me try again. Let's try again. At least I know that a book of this size will fit there now. This is hard. I don't want to start digging in the stacks just for the sake of a random hardback either. What about this one? City of Stardust by Georgia Summers. Do I have any just like regular editions of books in here? I'm pretty sure nearly everything is a subscription box book. That's interesting. That fits there with room to spare. Do you guys find that making a decision that doesn't matter is like so much harder than making a decision that actually does? Because I do. Okay, we're just gonna, this fits perfectly. I don't want that in there though. So this is a normal edition of a book. This is Witch Sign by Den Patrick. So that doesn't solve my problem at all though. Okay, we're just gonna do it. It doesn't matter. Everything's fine. Does it matter though? I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. What about this one? Actually, Engines of Empire by R.S. Ford. I'm actually making this really difficult for myself because this is a large paperback. So this has actually come off these shelves that are behind, and that means that I'm gonna have to dismantle the shelves a little bit so we can get into them. In terms of it being alphabetical, it would go, this isn't alphabetical. What has happened here? Bennett, Burton, Carey. Oh, I don't know if this is gonna fit. Please fit. It is. We're gonna make it fit. Oh my god, it's only just gonna fit. I did it! Because realistically, I do want to read that series, but I'm not interested in starting a random epic fantasy series that I want to read at some point, but that doesn't necessarily have to be right now. I'd rather make progress in like all of these random hardbacks I have. So that solves that problem. But I do still have another problem. And my second problem is what is going to replace this, which is the art copy. So this is supposed to be my immediate TBR. So these are the books that I've read in September. I have a gap here for my October TBR, which I've only just filmed it, so that is on a stack, in a stack on the floor here, and at the minute is way too big to fit up here. But on this level, I have a couple of books that I've received from publishers or authors at some point in the past that I haven't gotten to, and then I have a bunch of small hardbacks. So there are no small hardbacks in the stacks that aren't romance, and romance has its own place upstairs. I'm wondering if I have any like stray ARC copies that I haven't got to that could go in here, clearing up some space on my paperback shelves. I'm going to investigate. You are truly getting a tour of my very messy library right now. These are just my boxes for my September unboxing, which I'll be filming next week, and then these down here are the books for my next haul, which It's getting substantial. I'm gonna have to film that sometime soon. But I just pulled out Stormblood by Jeremy Saul from this corner here. This was sent to me by the author. He compared it to Red Rising. He said essentially if Red Rising didn't exist, then this book wouldn't. My issue with putting this over here is that is supposed to be my priority TBR, but realistically I literally never look at it. Like, that's why they're there, because they're rocks, and it's like, oh, if I have a gap or a readathon prompts that fits them, I should probably pick books from there. But it's almost like because I've put them there, I then no longer want to read them. But I do have this, or this one, which is A Taste of Golden Iron by Alexandra Rowland. This was in a swag bag that I got at an Olivia Blake event that I attended in Edinburgh, so this one as well could move over there. I'm gonna go see what paperbacks we have in the stacks to potentially replace these, and that will decide which one of those moves over. We are actually desperately running low on paperbacks in here, if I'm being honest. The only ones that we have actually that belong on the paperback shelves at all here are Warcross by Marie Lu, Ayana Gray, Beast of Prey, 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin, 1,000 Deaths of Ardor Ben by Tyler Whitesides, The Diamond Throne by David Eddings, and also The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodkin. Everything else here is like hardback or romance. The only one that will then fit down at the bottom of my shelves is The 1,000 Deaths of Ardor Ben, but then this is pretty chunky, so I don't know if it's gonna fit. And also needs to go on the shelf below, but we'll see. Okay, so before we get into rearranging, I needed to pick this up, which was on my red pile for September, because this goes in here and I don't want to lose its space. So at the minute, we will put A Taste of Golden Iron back. Oh my god, the next book that needs to move up is Battle Royale, which we have space for actually. We're doing okay for space up here, which is good because in this whole pile I have 5 Pretty Little Liars books that are gonna have to end up on this shelf at some point. And then that means hopefully that I should be able to get this one in. White sides. I'm gonna have to move up another one. So at this point when I'm squeezing things onto shelves that I'm like, do I really need this book? Could I just unhaul it? But no, I will try and keep my books for now. And now that we've done that, Tolkien, Thomas, yeah, no, that is the right order. This one fits with actually quite a bit of space down there. And then this one can slot right in, oh, not there. Not there, there. Beautiful. Okay, why are you so obsessed with me? You've had your dinner, what do you want? What do you want? So that is another 3 books scrapped and 2 books shelved. I just realized my tripod is propped up on a cushion, which is why the angle wasn't straight. But we are back to the unhaul cart. So I think right now, I want the space back on my shelves under the window that is being taken up by books 1 and 3 in this series. So I'm gonna give it a go. I didn't love book 1, so I gave book 1 a 3-star in, was it 2017? This one was published in 2020, so in 2019 I gave the first book in this series 3 stars, and I was much more generous with my ratings then. So I anticipate that if I read that book now I would give it 2 and I wouldn't even continue on with the series. So I am anticipating either giving this another 2-star and unhauling all of the series, or not even making it that far and DNFing it. If I'm being honest, I could not tell you anything about this series anymore. Okay, we had 3 main characters, I remember that. There is a prince, a monster, and the main character has blood magic. Let's go over here and get the first book out. See if that jogs my memory. Isn't it to do with like, they use religion as magic? A girl named Nadja who hears the whispers of the gods inside her head, a prince surrounded by desperate suitors and deadly assassins, and a monster hidden behind pale tortured eyes and a smile that cuts like a knife. The past of these 3 characters become entwined during a centuries-long war filled with sinners and saints, magic and mystery, and a star-crossed romance that threatens to tip the scales between dark and light forever. So, oh, this has like, is this my Reese bookmark? Oh my god, my naked painting Reese bookmarks in here. Damn. Well, I'm taking that out. I remember that this book had a lot of promise from the synopsis, but I don't think I liked the writing style pretty much at all. So I'm gonna give this one a go. But honestly, Emily Duncan has proven herself to be a not very nice person. So I am actually quite happy to just DNF this if I'm not vibing with it. But we'll see how I progress over the next like 24 hours or maybe even less, I guess. Good afternoon. I have not read anything yet, but I am having a very productive day. I've done some cleaning. I've also done some, like, there's a chair that is usually in my library that I want to move upstairs that is very, very old. It was in my granddad's house and he died, I want to say, like, how old am I? Like 20 years ago at least. The chair was his and then it went into my parents' house and then I brought it with me when I moved, and the upholstery is cream, but it's just kind of not cream anymore. So I've been cleaning the upholstery. I've honestly been working on it for days. I keep putting like a layer of carpet and upholstery cleaner on it, letting that settle, like cleaning it off and then doing another layer. So I've done another round of that. I've also done, because we got HelloFresh for this week, but next week we are once again going without HelloFresh. So I have done my meal planning, which this desk planner, actually, I picked this up from Ella Iconic when they stopped making physical planners. And I don't know why, because I've had HelloFresh for a long time. I actually looked at my account earlier and it's been 156 boxes that I've had from HelloFresh. So I've had HelloFresh for a long time, but I just didn't want to miss out in case I ever needed one, and lo and behold, it came in handy, which is why I hate throwing things away, because things come in handy. I do really want to, because obviously it's the weekend, like Saturday is about productivity for me, but I also want to chill as well. So my last thing that I'm doing is framing a bunch of the prints that I got from Comic-Con. So I went to the range a couple of weeks ago and I picked up some frames for some of them, but I haven't actually managed to sort them all out. So I'm gonna get framed the ones that I have frames for. I have no idea where I'm hanging them yet, which is a problem for yet another day. I think some of them, I know, like these ones especially. We got these ones knowing that they were gonna go in the kitchen, but the kitchen is next on the renovation list. We're not doing too much, like we're keeping the actual kitchen, but the like wall tiles are being replaced, the floor tiles are being replaced, and the whole thing needs like at least a fresh coat of paint. But I'm also changing the color of two of the walls, probably the one facing me and that one, like the one with the window on. I want to paint like a dark green, and then I'll paint like the other two walls a complementary white, replace light fittings and stuff. So yeah, like we're not going to be hanging anything on the kitchen walls yet, but I can still get them framed up and kind of prop them somewhere else in the meantime. I say in the meantime, I think it's going to be at least another, like at least the beginning of next year before we get someone in to tile the floor, which will be the first job, and the walls at the same time. But that is kind of like my next plan in terms of renovation. It's such a long process. Like if you don't have a massive pool of money and just renovate your entire house at once, like by the time we're done, we're gonna have to go around again or we'll be ready to move out because we'll have outgrown the house. But I do enjoy it. I do. When I get, it's just getting my mind around it and getting organized to do it, but when it's happening, I actually really enjoy it. Anyway, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm updating you. I just wanted to let you guys know how my Saturday is going. I am going to start the book a little bit later on tonight. Curtis is very busy at the minute, which means that I'm kind of just chilling out by myself while he's working. So I think I should be able to get quite a bit read today. Fingers crossed, because we're running out of September. There are 3 days left of the month, and now I feel like I'm going into panic mode a little bit.
Still feels like summer, and I simply don't wanna see the cold wind sneak back in our town. 'Cause we lived when it was our bare feet, tan skin glistening beneath the heat, evening swirl into a bird song beat. God, it's now so very bittersweet. So I guess I'll just put on my favorite sweater and say goodbye to summer. I keep on forgetting, times learn how to fly.
So I just came through to grab my book so that I can start it finally, but I wanted to mention a little something that I've been thinking about maybe implementing. I don't know if it's gonna work, if I'm being honest, but essentially, you know, the try a chapter tag where like you try a chapter of a book and you decide like out of all of the books that you try a chapter of which one you're going to continue with, or just like essentially making a judgment on a book based on the first chapter. I have never felt like I've been able to do that, and I always throw it back to the example of Red Rising. Like up until halfway through Red Rising, I was not vibing. Like I could have DNF'd because I was so lost. Luckily I read it back at a time when I didn't really DNF anything, because that series is literally my favorite series ever. But we all know, especially if you've been following this series, you will know that I am a sucker. I've even done it. I've done it twice in this vlog. I am a sucker for continuing to read a book that I'm not enjoying for absolutely no reason. So I wanted to try it, and because like I keep saying I'm not that bothered about this book, I want to implement like a 3 to 5 chapter kind of situation, and we're going to test it out on this book. So it is essentially like trying a chapter, but you're trying like 3 to 5, because if I were to get to chapter 6 in this book, oh, there's actually quite a lot. That's interlude 2, which I guess we could count those as chapters. I really hate deckled edges. 76 pages. So by 76 pages into a book, I should know, especially book 2 in a series, whether I'm vibing enough to continue. So we'll try it out, because I've been thinking about this for a little while. We'll try it out with this book. We'll see if I can decide whether I'm vibing with the book and whether I need to continue between 3 to 5 chapters into it, because I don't really want to waste more time than that on books that I'm going to give 2 stars. Once again, acknowledging the hypocrisy of the statement when I've literally done that twice in this vlog. But third time is not the charm. We don't want third time to be the charm. So we'll see what happens within 3 to 5 pages, chapters even, of Ruthless Gods. Do I have to flicky flicky? Or can you fix it?
Flicky flicky on the light switchy switchy.
How many?
I don't know.
Nope, that wasn't enough. Okay, yay. Okay, so I know we just spoke, and I know I said what I said, but I read 2 chapters of Ruthless Gods. And honestly, this was just like a little bit more complex than I remember it being. And I don't remember anything about book 1. And I feel like that was one of my main issues with book 1 actually, was that I thought that it was either moving too quickly or I wasn't really grasping what was happening. And I feel like I know it's been years since I read book 1, and I have made very little effort to recap book 1 and like refresh myself, but I also am 100% not invested enough in these books to bother doing that. And I know that I'm never going to reread book 1. That's one of the reasons why these books have sat on my shelf for so long. I don't really have a strong desire to read them, but I have them all, so I feel like I should attempt it. But I read like, I think I ended up like 15 pages, and I read the prologue and I read the first chapter, and I was like, oh, somebody's dead. I don't remember that happening. Like, oh, no, I don't remember that happening. I mean, I had to read you guys the synopsis of the first book because I couldn't tell you anything about it. So I think we're just gonna cut our losses. I was gonna say we gave it a good try. We tried to try. We did not succeed in even trying to try, but at least we tried to try. Right? So that means that we're gonna have to rearrange some more books. I'm so happy actually to be in this space back on these shelves, and I feel sad about this series. I feel sad about the author in general, but it is aesthetically more than like anything else. Like, these books are beautiful. They have a very gothic vibe, and I feel like from what I remember of the first book, which admittedly is very little, I really loved the idea of the characters and the idea of the series, but the execution just wasn't there for me, and I was really sad about it then as well, because the vibes are immaculate, the substance not so great. But let us unhaul some more books. Hopefully the next book I try, I will actually at least try. So this is one of, if not, no, this is actually my favorite shelf, my favorite bookcase in this entire room. One of the things that I love about it is just the design of it. This one was actually like a church bookshelf. Do you know, the one that goes like at the end of the benches for all of like the hymn books? And I think my mum and dad picked it up at auction or something potentially. There were 2 of them. I've got one. I'm pretty sure that one is still at my dad's. But something else that I really love about it is that I have read everything along this bottom row, kind of. So like obviously I didn't read Blessed Monsters and Once Upon a Time. This also used to live here and I hadn't read that, but I'd read like the first book. I haven't read Daughter of Smoke and Bone, but like I've read all the rest of the Lady Taylors. And I just also really love how it looks. So we're gonna have to replace these with something that I've already read, which means that we're not going to be able to replace things from the stacks. We're gonna have to get the books for this shelf from somewhere else and then replace those books from the stacks instead. Oh, this is tighter than I thought it was. First up, let us scrap what we're scrapping. This one is actually the Illumicrate edition. We have, of course, Wicked Saints and Ruthless Gods, which I'm going to take my bookmark out of. And seeing as we're discovering a whole lot about a whole lot of my books in this vlog, I'm going to make sure there's no bookmark in this one. It's really hard when the edges are deckled. I'm not a deckled edge fan at all. I'm glad that we seem to have left those behind. It's been a long time since I've seen a book that has deckled edges. So these 3 we are going to be scrapping. They're so pretty, not very good in my opinion. I know tons of people love them. And we have a space here that in theory we can fit 2 books in. In practice we'll see, but we're gonna go over to the grey shelves that we've seen quite a lot in this series to see what I can take off there. So the lighting down here is as horrendous as always, but I have options of what we can move and I don't know what I'm gonna go for. We have space for 2 books. Am I gonna take the first 2 books in the series like Belladonna and Foxglove? I feel like they would be a good fit down there. Or I could take maybe the first book that I've read in 2 different things. So I could take One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, and I could also take The Crimson Moth. I think the issue that I would have with that though is that in the long run we're not going to be able to fit all of both of these series down there. That being said, I do have the sequel to One Dark Window in my haul pile. I cannot replace it or put it onto the shelf at this stage because I haven't done my haul yet, so all of my haul books are in a separate pile. Would be really handy though if I had have filmed that haul, because then I could have moved that over. So I think we do only have space for 2 books. I could also take maybe these 2. These are the first 2 books in 2 duologies, and then whichever one I complete first can be the one that kind of lives over there. And they're both actually pretty small. That could be a good shout actually. I never did pick up the sequel in the Goldsboro edition though, which is sad. Although I actually think I got an arc of this, did I? Or did I read this for the GSFF challenge, or had I already read it at that point? I don't remember if I read this for the GSFF vlog series. I did, and then I picked up the sequel. Did I get it from the publisher? I'm sure I did. I'm so confused, but anyway, I did not pick up the sequel in the Goldsboro edition. I probably still can though. I don't feel like it's one that would be out of stock. But yeah, I think I'm gonna move these 2 across, and then we're looking for 2 hardbacks from the stacks to fill this gap. I did really well here alphabetically as well. It wasn't even on purpose, but this actually, both of them I think, yeah, go here. Alphabetically, that is where they would have gone on the shelf anyway, which is perfect. Also perfect fit. Okay, now for the stacks. My goal is to make this less of an ordeal than I made it the other day. So the letters that we're looking for, if we want to slot them directly in, I mean we don't have to, but it's around G, F kind of area. So I could go with this one, which was a Goldsboro one I think that I intended to skip and I forgot about like at some point last year, and it's The House of Marion by JL. I couldn't even tell you anything about this. Realistically, we are gonna need that space on the shelves again eventually, so it's very likely that we're gonna see these kind of coming back into the stacks, but that is a problem for later on, not right now. Oh, we could take Mistress of Lies, but I do want to read that. I literally said I wasn't going to make this as much of an ordeal as I made it last time, and once again I am making it as much of an ordeal as it was last time. Okay, it doesn't matter because I reckon that these books are going to come back out again anyway. So we will go for Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright and House of Marion by J.L. and hope that they fit. Those 2 also fit perfectly there with absolutely no rearranging. And now it is time to decide what I read next, and honestly I have no idea, so we're back to the drawing board. Okay, so realistically, if I plan on actually finishing a book, which I mean I would like to, or would I, the point is to clear necessarily, not to read if we're not enjoying, which is something that I need to actually live by instead of just like keep saying. Realistically, I only have time for like one more moderately lengthed book. And the problem I'm having now is finding one that I think I am likely to unhaul. And I feel like if we go by just that criteria, the one that I'm most likely to unhaul after I've read it is The Night Country by Melissa Albert, which is the sequel to, I think it was The Hazelwood, which was a YA contemporary fantasy. I'm pretty sure it's about a girl whose grandmother wrote a very famous book of fairy tales. There's only like a few copies in existence, and the people who love this book of fairy tales are fanatical about it. I can't remember what the plot is, as it, like, I actually remember a lot about the book, which is weird because it was very like fever dream-esque, but I can't remember what is a spoiler and what was outlined in the synopsis, so I'm gonna kind of leave it there. It was pretty much a standalone, so I don't know why we had a sequel, and I felt very satisfied with the first book, but when there was a sequel I was like, okay, I'll give the sequel a try, but because it felt very much like a standalone, I didn't feel much desire to continue. Now, in terms of clearing space on the shelf, the reason why I haven't picked this one up yet is because we're only gonna get like one paperback off the shelves, which is this big, which in terms of like clearing shelf space, it's only doing like minimum damage. But I feel like if we don't want to run the risk of me reading a book and wanting to shelve it and then ending up in a pickle, The Night Country is the way that we've got to go. So does it say why this is a sequel? So this one maybe has a little bit of a murder mystery element to it. The first book I very distinctly remember being like a story in 3 parts. So you start off and it's like a contemporary fantasy, and then there's like this weird fever dream-esque kind of montage moment that reminded me a lot of Night Film by Marisha Pessl, like the middle section of that. And then it kind of went very high fantasy, which took me by surprise. So I remember, I think I gave the first book 3 stars. So once again, should we be reading sequels to 3-star books? Probably not. If I read it in 2024, would I give it 3 stars or 2? Probably 2. But this is the situation we are in right now. So we're gonna give the sequel a try. It is a short one, and I remember the first one being a pretty quick read. It's 327 pages, which pretty much fits perfectly with the time that I've got left. But yeah, I'll let you know how this one goes. I'm not particularly enthusiastic about it, but I'm also kind of willing to be along for the ride, especially if it ends up as compelling as the first book was, because I went into the first book expecting one thing and then I got something completely different, and I kept reading. It was like a car crash that I couldn't look away from because everything that happened was weirder than the thing that happened before. And I didn't love the book when I came out of it, but it was definitely entertaining because I had no idea what was happening and was riveted the entire time. So hopefully book 2 is a little bit like book 1 in that regard. But I know that The Hazelwood is not a book that I would ever revisit, and it's only still on my shelves because The Night Country's here. So I do think that this is a strong contender for clearing just a tiny bit of space, but space nonetheless on the paperback shelves before the end of this video. Good morning. We are actually having a family cozy reading session at the minute, so I've gotten through quite a chunk of The Night Country and I'm having a really good time with this one actually, which is a little bit worrying because I picked this one based on it being the one that I thought that I was definitely going to unhaul when I was done with it. But the thing that I really like about this, and that I really enjoyed about The Hazelwood, which is why I think I ended up getting the sequel even though I gave the book overall like 3 stars, is the writing. Melissa Albert has a really descriptive, atmospheric writing style. I also really like the contemporary fantasy elements of it. Like the first book starts off in, I'm pretty sure it does start in New York, and this one also starts in New York, although like a lot has happened kind of in between and the circumstances are different. The way that Melissa Albert builds this really unsettling, almost ominous, atmospheric, magical atmosphere on the backdrop of contemporary New York, I really like. I love the little bit of like drama just in the writing style, and I love me like a really dramatic, atmospheric, like descriptive writing style. But it is the whimsy and the ambiguity of the fantasy elements in this duology that I don't really love. So it's really hard to talk about this sequel without spoiling the first one, because everything that happened in the first one took me completely by surprise. I'm pretty sure that when I went into that first book, I thought that I was going into a high fantasy, and that is absolutely not what it was. And there are a whole bunch of plot twists. But essentially, this one is kind of following a murder mystery. There are a series of people who are close to our main character Alice who are being murdered, and their body parts are being taken, although nobody knows why. So it's not that Alice is necessarily going out to investigate this, but as this series of murders starts creeping like closer and closer to her, she is being forced to take an interest, even though she doesn't necessarily want anything to do with this, because she's very much like kind of trying to balance a life that is in between the mundane and the magical, but the magical is kind of like creeping up on her and won't leave her alone. She is also very torn with like what she wants to devote her life to, whether it is that mundane or magical element, and all of that kind of plays in here. We do have things in here like content warnings for threat of sexual assault. There are fairy tales in here, and it is like the main magical element is relating to fairy tales, so we have a lot of the original underlying messages of like Grimm's fairy tales and Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, which did feature a lot of, if not explicit then at least implied, violence to women and like sexual assault, which is kind of portrayed in here in a more contemporary manner. But I am kind of 50-50 right now, as I felt with the Hazelwood, where I'm really sinking into this. I'm enjoying it having that murder mystery element as well. It's kind of almost in the vein of a thriller or a slasher as opposed to a classic like whodunit kind of style, which is really compelling me through this. And I love me like a YA thriller or slasher, like that's one of my favorite kind of subgenres. So that bit is great, but then we have things like dream sequences, and also when we do get into the magical elements in this book, it is almost kind of like run-on sentences and stream of consciousness, which I don't really like, and that is kind of what is throwing me out of it. So we will see how this one plays out, because the first book did go more fantastical. It did go almost high fantasy in parts, and at this point, based on what the core of this plot is, I'm not sure we are going to go in that direction. I think we might stay rooted in the contemporary, which may mean that I could potentially end up enjoying this more than the Hazelwood, and I'm not sure what that's going to mean for this challenge and this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, if I'm being honest. But we will see how it plays out, how much of that ambiguity and whimsy we lead into. I still feel like it is going to play like a big part in the plot, because it is like one of the main themes and the main magical element, but we will see kind of how far it delves into that as the book goes on. So I was just looking at the other books that Melissa Albert has written in the years since the Hazelwood. This one that was released this year sounds very, very interesting. But what I actually noticed here is that I gave the Hazelwood 4 stars, not 3, making the chances of me unhauling the Night Country even more unlikely. So yay for that. I have pretty much done nothing except read today. I did go out with Curtis to take Brie for a walk, and I also played a little Overcooked. But aside from that, I have literally done nothing but read the Night Country. So I only have 50 pages to go. I'm on page 267. So is that like 53 pages I have? Oh, I've got a little bit more, like 59 pages to go. And I understand now why I'm very like ambivalent about the Hazelwood, because it is exactly as I predicted earlier today. Like I really, really like the writing style. I really like the atmosphere that Melissa Albert creates, but the story has lost me because of how whimsical. I'm pretty sure one of my wall tiles on the fireplace is sliding down the wall, and I've just noticed. I am 99% sure that when I laid these, I did not leave this gap here. Like look, these are all neatly joined. This one has dropped down. I'm gonna have to push that back up. They are just, oh wow. They are just peel and stick tiles, but it is weird that that has moved. I mean, I do like my candles there, but I don't think the air is that hot to make the whole thing slide down, but maybe I'm wrong. I'll fix it. Anyway, where was I? What was I saying? Oh yeah, it's the fairy tale-esque nature of this, and I have discovered more and more I don't really like fairy tales. I don't know why, because I used to, or at least I like the idea of them. I like fairy tale retellings, but I think it's things written in the style of a fairy tale don't really work for me, and I think it's because I always want to know the why and the how, which is why I don't love short stories, because I always want to know why things are happening, and with short stories you don't get that. Normally in the page count, like, just doesn't allow for a deep dive into like the science or the magic or the logic behind what's actually going on. And with fairy tales, like, you just don't, like, it's It's about what is, not about why it's happening. For that reason, I don't think that they really work for me, because they always leave me wanting a little bit more. They always leave me with questions. They don't feel like fully realized to me, because they don't have that like full depth of like, this is exactly why this is happening. Because a lot of the times things are happening just because. Like, why is this magic real? Just because it is, you know? And I just can't really get behind that. So yeah, I do think I'm feeling less and less confident, or more and more confident as I go through this book, that I am going to be unhauling it. I feel like other stories by Melissa Albert could be for me, because I do like her writing. This series doesn't quite work for me, and I feel like I feel more torn about it than I do a lot of things, because I really like the writing. And it always starts off like, the first book started really strong for me, this book started really strong, but the more we get into it and the more kind of like fantastical it gets as the story develops, the less and less interested I become. Look at this, man. Can I just... I'm so confused because it's not even budging. So I don't understand how there's a massive gap in it. What the fuck? It is very dark and very gloomy today. It has been raining pretty much since I woke up intermittently, but I hope that the lighting is good enough, because I really, like, I know we're getting to the season where I'm gonna have to get my ring light out, but I don't want that to be today. But I did actually finish this last night. So I read pretty much the entire thing. Until yesterday, I was like 30 pages into it, but I read like the previous evening. The rest I read in one sitting, so it definitely gets marks for that. I ended up giving it a 3-star in the end, which, as we've said, my rating scale has changed a little bit over the years. So maybe if I'd read the Hazelwood now as well, that would be a 3-star. This is a very conflicting one for me, because like I said, I do really like the writing style and the atmosphere created by the writing style, but the plot and the fantastical element do lose me a little bit. It's a frustrating 3-star, because some 3-stars are like, okay, I liked it, but like not that much, and it's fine. But when there's an element in a book that I like so much, and then one that really takes me out of the story, it's difficult, because I want to like it so much more than I did when looking at it as a full picture, and then that is like a little bit harder to get around than if like I kind of liked it a bit but also like wasn't that bothered about it, you know? This is an interesting duology as well, because I don't really know who I would recommend it for. I'm not sure if I would recommend it for fans of contemporary fantasy, because it does have those more fairy tale-esque, more almost high fantasy or postal fantasy vibes. But also on the flip side of that, I'm not sure that I would recommend it to people who really like fairy tales or modern fairy tales or books told in a fairy tale like manner, because it does have those contemporary elements and it weaves the two together. I feel like potentially if you like contemporary fantasy and fairy tale-esque stories, that this series could be a hit for you, because I like one, like I do like the occasional contemporary fantasy. Fairy tale-esque stories are a lot more hit and miss with me, and oftentimes more miss than they are a hit. I did also think that the end of this was quite rushed, like the main event, like the main conclusion of the conflict, as well as the wrap up, and it also did end on not quite an ambiguous note, but also like nothing was concretely wrapped up, which we also know that I hate. So I do feel like we could have had another 50 or so pages on this, like really wrapping up those elements. There is a 2.5 installment in this series called Tales from the Hinterland, which there is a 98% chance that I will not read that, because Tales of the Hinterland implies that it is going to be fairy tale stories set in this world, or the fairy tale world within this world, which is our world kind of, and that's like short stories and the fairy tale nature, absolutely not for me. So it is with a little bit of sadness that I let you guys know that I am actually going to be scrapping The Night Country and the Hazelwood. We were touch and go there for a second. I almost kept this one, but alas, it's not for me. So what we're gonna do, because this goes on the very top shelf of my bookcase, and I know that I don't have any authors in the stacks that have a name that is that far like up the alphabet. So we're gonna go to the stacks, we're gonna find the author with the name the furthest up the alphabet that we can, and see how much we're gonna have to rearrange the bookshelves, because I think it's gonna be like half the cases of gonna need pushing up a little bit to make room for whatever it is that we're gonna shelve. I actually think I can see the book that we're gonna end up shelving from here, but let's clear all this out because as soon as, spoiler alert, as soon as I'm done here, I'm starting a new episode, so I need to get down here anyway. Okay, so for the paperbacks, this is the one that I think we're gonna end up going with because we have Eddings, Hodkin, Jemison, Lou is further up. Yeah, so it is going to be the Diamond Throne by David Eddings that we shelve. Thankfully, it's actually not very much. We need to get this in here. So I think once we've moved everything up, it's hopefully going to fit at the end of this shelf. Normally, if I'm doing a lot of work up here, I would get my step stool. Because I don't anticipate it taking me very long, I'm wondering if I can just reach a hazelwood from here. Okay, so this one is being scrapped. Very sad as well. It's a really pretty book. And hopefully if we can move one book from every other shelf, we can fit in the Diamond Throne. This one is a chunky one, but she is gonna fit. Actually made a decent amount of space here. Could I actually get something else on? Let me go see what else we've got. So the next one, alphabetically, would be Beasts of Prey by Iona Gray. And that one would go here, next to The Fault in Our Stars. So I actually need to get, I've just read the Book of Life, so I need to put that back. This one's a tight shelf so that it doesn't lose its place. I don't know because of how tight this shelf is, I don't know if this is gonna work, but we've done what we needed to. That one's also really tight. Yeah, no. This shelf is really tight and this one is really tight. Yeah, I'm actually just gonna leave it like that because these shelves actually really needed a little bit of room to breathe. Okay guys, I will admit this. I don't think y'all are ready for this jelly because in episode 8 of Shelve It or Scrap It, we have managed to shelve, we'll do shelf first, 8 books out of the stacks, and we have managed to scrap 11. This is a heavy stack. This is a lot of books. So a big thank you to Amy for the suggestion because it was successful. We are now ending this episode on 59 books. We started on 68, I believe. It is worth noting that another book has left the stacks because it has joined my October TBR. It was my Patreon pick for the month of October, so it is currently living on the other side of the room. Whether something wings its way back onto the stacks in its place, we will have to wait and see. But for this minute, we are ending this episode on 59 books, and we will also be beginning episode 9 on 59 books, because if you are big Shelve It or Scrap It fans, then you will be happy to know that you will not have to wait very long for episode 9, because I'm literally going to start filming it as soon as I'm done here, and I think it will be 2 weeks after this video goes up is when it should be hitting your subscription feed. Interesting episode, I would say. Interesting theme. I don't think we could do this theme again with that pool of books because, like I said, it'll be a little bit more hit or miss, which would up the stakes but doesn't necessarily help the stacks. We could just do like a regular vlog where I read some more of those series, and then if I unhaul them, I can fill from the stacks, and then if I don't, I guess I'll add to the stack. So we could still carry on with a video like this that just isn't Shelve It or Scrap It, but I've had a good time. It has definitely killed 3 birds with 1 stone. I have read more sequels, I have made progress on my Self Destructing Books list, which I literally never do, and we also have done a full episode of Shelve It or Scrap It. So the theme for the next episode, if you're interested, is the Spookopoly round, and if you are not familiar with the Spookopoly-thon, it is a readathon that I'm hosting for the month of October, and I will link the announcement down in my description box. But I'm pretty sure that that brings us to the end of episode 8 of Shelve It or Scrap It, guys. So do stay tuned if you are interested in anything that I have to come. The next actual vlog that you see on my channel is going to be a productive day in the life vlog, which, spoiler alert, I am filming right now as well. But aside from that, guys, please do not forget to like this vlog if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.